There's only one yogic practice, and that's the practice of enlightenment, the practice of realization, practice of samadhi. Anything else isn't yoga. You might ask, well, how do you do that? How do you practice enlightenment? We don't go there. You either do it or you don't. First of all, you have to have stumbled upon the nature of enlightenment. This is what you read about in the literature with people from the past or even people in modern times. They fall into enlightenment. You very rarely read autobiographies which say, I practiced my yoga and meditation diligently for 20 years and then I got enlightened. It sometimes happens to people that have never done any meditation practice. And the curious thing is, such people are inclined to start recommending practices by which enlightenment can happen. This goes right back to the Buddha. The Buddha didn't use any technique when he got enlightened. The Buddha was the master of all techniques. He'd gone as far as anybody could in those days with the techniques that were available. Even practicing asceticism to the point of death. And he dropped them all. He dropped all the techniques which were recommended by the teachers of the day, and there were many of them. And what happened was, he remembered a time when he was sitting underneath the Bodhi tree on the night of his enlightenment. He traversed all the so-called higher states of consciousness, the higher states of absorption. And then he remembered a time when he was a teenage boy, sitting under a rose apple tree, watching his father ploughing the field. And this is somewhat at odds, isn't it, of the story of the Buddha being brought up as a pampered prince cut off from the outside world. That story is clearly allegorical. The young prince's condition, the one that was prevented from seeing things like sickness and old age and was entertained by dancing girls, is actually the condition of all of us when we're children. I wonder if you can remember the first time you saw a sick person, the first time you saw an old person. It's quite shocking, isn't it? It's this shock which the traditional story of the Buddha relates. And it wasn't just sickness and old age and infirmity, which are all shocking to the young, fresh mind of the child. It might be a shock to find out where meat comes from. A lot of children have a problem with that one. I remember being very shocked when I found out about sexual intercourse. That can't be right, surely. There's something wrong. I got over that one though. Most people get over their shocks. Most kids get over their shocks. But the Buddha didn't. The young Buddha, Prince Gautama, didn't. They prompted him to search for some deeper truth. And I think the truth was he wasn't a pampered prince. His father was an elected head of a republic. So he probably wasn't particularly wealthy. And the young Gautama was sitting under the rose apple tree watching his father ploughing the field. And he entered a state of spontaneous harmony. It's difficult to describe it. But this is where he saw the answer. You might have had such experiences yourself, lying on a beach or sitting in the garden on a balmy summer's afternoon, You've closed your eyes. All the sounds are going on round about you, but they seem in the distance. There's a sense of your own being, a sense of harmony, of completeness, of relaxation, of total relaxation, but it's an alert relaxation. You're alert. This is the key. This is the key. This is the key that the Buddha saw when he was sitting under the Bodhi tree. All the higher states of the mind were available to him, but that's what he came back to. He came back to that experience, and that was the key to his enlightenment. Now, how come the Buddha never taught this? The Buddha is known for all his teachings on the conditioned nature of our everyday existence, of ethical training, of purifying the mind, and so on. These were all the things that the Buddha taught. He very rarely pointed directly to awareness. There's one famous instance when he did, when he was due to preach to the assembly, and all he did was hold up a lotus flower and didn't say anything. One monk, Mahakashyapa, or Kashyapa, got it. And this is what the Zen masters trace the origin of Zen back to. It's a direct pointing to the mind. And this is what yoga is. When you have this direct pointing to the mind, and this is mind with a capital M, not our limited, conditioned mind. This is enlightenment. This is enlightenment practice. This is yoga.